Have you ever thought about how an arrogant, spoiled bully could transform into someone entirely different? What if the character you once despised was actually one of the most complex and tragic figures in the entire story? In today's video, you will find out how Draco Malfoy, the infamous Slytherin, changed in ways no one expected. At first glance, Draco Malfoy is nothing more than a snobbish, cruel, and entitled boy. Throughout most of the series, he seems like nothing but a nuisance, petty, jealous, and weak. Tom Felton brought him to life so well that it was easy to hate him. But beneath the surface, Draco was never just a typical antagonist. His journey was long, painful, and filled with moments of doubt, fear, and forced choices. He had to question everything he was taught, break free from generations of Malfoy legacy, and ultimately become his own person. Unlike Harry, who was shaped by love and friendship, Draco changed despite everything and everyone around him. That's what makes his transformation so fascinating. Today we'll trace Draco's path from a privileged heir to a reluctant Death Eater, and finally to a man who left his past behind. Draco was born into one of the wealthiest and most powerful pure-blood families, the Malfoys. His mother, Narcissa, came from the esteemed Black family, further cementing his noble status. From the moment he could understand words, he was told he was special. He was the only child, the heir to the family's name and fortune. It was both a privilege and an immense pressure. He had to live up to the expectations of his ambitious and proud father, Lucius Malfoy. Lucius was everything to Draco, a role model, a figure of strength, and the person who shaped his beliefs. Prejudice, arrogance, disdain for Muggleborns, all of it was absorbed from his father. Even before Hogwarts, Draco was well versed in the politics of the wizarding world. He knew about Voldemort, his father's ties to the Dark Lord, and the legend of the boy who lived. From an early age, Draco surrounded himself with the children of Death Eaters, preparing to carry on his family's legacy. But he had no idea just how much his world would shatter in the years to come. As expected, Draco was sorted into Slytherin, like generations of Malfoys before him. He was intelligent, disciplined, and had no trouble with academics. But his biggest weakness was his pride, and Harry Potter became the source of his deepest resentment. At first, Draco tried to befriend Harry, hoping to pull him into the right crowd. Lucius had expected Potter to become a powerful dark wizard, possibly even Voldemort's successor. But Draco quickly realized his father was wrong. Harry wasn't interested in pure-blood superiority or Slytherin ideals, and that rejection stung. From that moment, Draco's hatred for Harry burned strong. He envied everything about him, his fame, his talent, and the way people adored him. While Draco was raised to believe he was superior, he was constantly overshadowed by Harry. That bitterness grew as the years passed. Deep down, Draco knew he wasn't like Harry. He wasn't brave. He wasn't a hero. He could torment weaker students, but when faced with true danger, he was a coward. He hated that about himself, and nothing exposed his fears more than his duels with Harry. Each time, he lost. Meanwhile, Lucius Malfoy was working behind the scenes to gain more power. He orchestrated events to remove Dumbledore, reopened the Chamber of Secrets, and later rejoined Voldemort when the Dark Lord returned. Draco idolized his father and felt pride in his family's influence, until everything went horribly wrong. Lucius Malfoy's downfall was swift and brutal. His attempt to capture Harry ended in disaster, and he was sent to Azkaban. Draco, once the proud heir of an untouchable family, was suddenly the son of a disgraced criminal. The Malfoy name was tarnished. Voldemort saw an opportunity to punish Lucius and tighten his grip on the Malfoys. He gave Draco an impossible task: kill Albus Dumbledore. It was a death sentence, a mission designed for him to fail. But Draco had no choice. Desperate to prove himself, he tried everything: poisoning, cursed objects, and finally a direct ambush. But when the moment came, standing face to face with Dumbledore, wand shaking in his hands, Draco realized something terrifying. He wasn't a killer. He couldn't do it. Instead, it was Snape who cast the fatal spell. Draco lived, but his fate was sealed. He was now a Death Eater in name only, caught in a nightmare he couldn't escape. Voldemort had no real use for the Malfoys. Their mansion became his headquarters, their status reduced to servants and pawns. Draco saw firsthand the horror of the Dark Lord's rule. The pride and arrogance he once flaunted disappeared. His first true act of defiance came when Harry, Ron, and Hermione were captured and brought to Malfoy Manor. Draco had the chance to expose Harry to Voldemort. Instead, he hesitated. He lied. He let them go. By the time the Battle of Hogwarts began, Draco was a broken shell of the boy he once was. He wasn't fighting for Voldemort. He wasn't fighting against him either. He was lost, trapped between fear and guilt. In the end, it was Harry who saved Draco's life. Twice. That moment shattered everything Draco had been raised to believe. The war was over. Voldemort was dead. And Draco had to decide what kind of man he wanted to be. Draco Malfoy was given something few Death Eaters ever got: a second chance. The Malfoys had abandoned Voldemort at the last moment, and because of that, they were spared from Azkaban. For the first time, Draco saw the truth. His father's beliefs had led their family to ruin. He no longer hated Harry. There was no point. The war had destroyed too much already. He married Astoria Greengrass, a woman who, like him, had grown disillusioned with pure blood supremacy. They raised their son Scorpius to be different from past generations of Malfoys, kinder, more open, and free from the weight of old prejudices. Draco never became a hero. He never sought redemption. But he did something just as powerful. He changed. And that is why, out of all the characters in Harry Potter, his journey remains one of the most remarkable. Draco and Harry had spent years as bitter rivals. Their hatred seemed inevitable, like fire and water clashing at every turn. But could things have been different? Could they, under different circumstances, have become friends? After the war, their lives took separate paths. Harry became an Auror, hunting down the last remnants of Voldemort's followers. Draco disappeared from public view, retreating into a quieter existence with his family. They weren't enemies anymore, but they weren't friends either. There was no dramatic reconciliation, no moment of mutual understanding. Just silence. Yet there was a time when Draco almost broke free from his past. When he stood in the astronomy tower, wand shaking, facing Dumbledore, he had a choice. "I haven't got any options," he cried, his voice raw. But Dumbledore saw through the fear. "Draco, Draco, you are not a killer." In that moment he wasn't a Malfoy, a Death Eater, or Harry's enemy. He was just a scared boy, trapped in a life he never chose. If Harry had witnessed that moment, would he have seen Draco differently? He had always seen him as arrogant, cruel, a coward who hid behind his father's wealth and influence. But here, Draco was broken. If Harry had been there, perhaps he would have understood him. Perhaps it could have been the beginning of something else. There was another moment when Draco had the chance to define his future. At Malfoy Manor, when the Snatchers dragged in Harry, bloodied and weak, Draco hesitated. "Well?" Bellatrix demanded. Draco's lips parted, but no answer came. He knew it was Harry. He knew turning him in would win him favor with Voldemort. And yet, he faltered. It wasn't friendship, but it was something, a hesitation, a glimpse of doubt. But Harry never forgot the past. He had seen Draco torment Neville, call Hermione a mudblood, nearly kill Katie Bell with a cursed necklace. He had watched him sneer at the Weasleys, mock the poor, cling to his father's shadow. Even if Draco had changed, could Harry ever truly trust him? Draco, too, had reasons to keep his distance. He was raised to see Harry as a threat, an enemy, an obstacle to his family's future. Even after the war, he must have felt the weight of his choices, the shame of his past. Approaching Harry would have meant facing everything he had done, everything he had once believed in. Years later, when they met on Platform 934, their sons boarding the Hogwarts Express, there was no animosity. Draco gave Harry a small nod, an acknowledgement. Not quite friendship, but no longer hatred. A silent understanding that the past was behind them. Could they have been friends, perhaps, if they had spoken sooner, if they had reached out before the war hardened them, if circumstances had been different? But in the end, they were not meant to be friends. They were simply two men who had survived the same war, standing on opposite sides of a line that neither was willing to cross.